The scorching sun bore down on a bustling gas station, its steady hum punctuated by car engines and hurried footsteps. Amid the chaos, Christine, a diligent and compassionate attendant, moved between vehicles, greeting customers with a warm smile despite the heat. Her day seemed like any other, until an elderly man shuffled toward her, clutching his hands nervously. "Excuse me, miss," he began, his voice trembling. "I seem to have forgotten my wallet. I only need a little gas to get home. I promised to return with the money." Christine studied him carefully. His clothes were worn, his face etched with lines of struggle, but his eyes held a sincerity that tugged at her heart. Around her, murmurs rose from other employees. "Another scammer," someone scoffed. "Old man's playing her for a fool," another added with a laugh. Christine's chest tightened, not with doubt but with anger at their cruelty. She turned back to the man and smiled softly. "Don't worry, sir. I believe you." Without hesitation, she opened her purse, counted the exact amount, and handed it to him. The man's eyes brimmed with tears. "Thank you. I swear I'll pay you back. Here, take my address as proof." He scribbled hurriedly on a scrap of paper and handed it to her. As he walked away, Christine's colleagues shook their heads, their whispers laced with mockery. But she ignored them, her focus unwavering. Kindness is never wasted, she thought, though a nagging sense of foreboding lingered. Little did Christine know her simple act of generosity was about to spark a chain of events that would change her life forever. A story of kindness, injustice, and an unexpected twist that no one saw coming. As the elderly man disappeared into the distance, Christine turned back to the bustling station. Her co-workers remained in their corners, throwing her sidelong glances and whispering under their breaths. "Do you think he's coming back?" "No chance," sneered one of them, leaning against a pump. "She's too soft. This isn't a charity, you know," another added with a mocking chuckle. Christine ignored their remarks, her hands busy cleaning a pump handle. But inside, she could feel a storm brewing, a mix of frustration and determination. She glanced at the crumpled note in her hand with the man's name and address scrawled across it. Louis Jansen. His sincerity had been unmistakable to her. Moments later, the station's manager, Mr. Carter, appeared from his office, a clipboard tucked under his arm. His sharp eyes scanned the station floor, catching the uneasy atmosphere. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice cutting through the chatter. One of Christine's co-workers wasted no time. "Christine just gave some old guy money for gas. From her own purse, she says. Probably got scammed." Carter's brow furrowed. He fixed his gaze on Christine, his tone suddenly stern. "Is this true, Christine?" She stood her ground, meeting his eyes. "Yes, sir. The man was in need. He forgot his wallet, and I believed him. He promised to return the money." Carter shook his head, his expression hardening. "Promises don't pay bills, Christine. We run a business here. It's not your job to cover for people who can't pay." "It wasn't company money," she replied, her voice firm. "It came out of my pocket." Carter sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "Even so, it's not a good look. Customers see this, and they'll think we're handing out freebies. I'll let it slide for now, but don't make it a habit." Christine nodded, biting back her frustration. She didn't regret her decision, but the lack of understanding from those around her stung. As the day wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The air seemed heavier, the chatter more pointed. Even the sun, once bright and invigorating, now felt oppressive. Still, she reminded herself of Louis's gratitude and the kindness she'd extended. That alone made it worthwhile, or so she hoped. By the end of her shift, the gas station had quieted down, the bustle replaced by a calm evening breeze. Christine was wiping down the counter inside when she heard the unmistakable shuffle of Carter's footsteps. He beckoned her to his office with a curt wave. Inside, the office was dimly lit, its walls adorned with company policies and motivational posters. Carter sat behind his desk, his face unreadable. "Sit down," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. Christine obeyed, her heart pounding. "I heard from a few of the employees," Carter began, his tone measured. They claim you took money from the register to pay for that man's fuel earlier today. Is that true? Christine's eyes widened. No, sir. That's not true at all. I used my own money, I swear. Carter studied her for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. Christine, I've always known you to be honest, but this kind of incident puts me in a tough spot. Whether you used your money or not, it's created a perception problem. A perception problem, she echoed, incredulous. Yes, he said firmly. If word gets out that employees here are covering for customers, it could encourage others to try their luck. We can't have that. Christine's voice trembled, but she forced herself to stay composed. I understand the rules, Mr. Carter, but isn't there room for compassion? That man was desperate, and I couldn't just turn him away. Carter sighed, his expression softening slightly. I get where you're coming from, Christine. But this is bigger than one act of kindness. The rules exist for a reason. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go. For a moment, Christine couldn't speak. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Let me go, she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. Carter nodded. You're a good worker, Christine, but this is about maintaining order. I'll provide a recommendation if you need it. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, she said quietly, rising from the chair. She turned and left the office, her footsteps heavy. Outside, the cool evening air greeted her, but it did little to soothe the storm inside. As she walked to her car, she replayed the day's events in her mind. Had she made a mistake? Was kindness really such a liability? When she arrived home, the sight of her modest house brought a lump to her throat. Her mother, Isabel, was sitting in the living room, knitting quietly. Her daughter, Louise, was on the floor, coloring in a notebook. "Mommy!" Louise exclaimed, running to her with a bright smile. But her joy quickly faded as she noticed her mother's red-rimmed eyes. What's wrong? Christine knelt down, wrapping her daughter in a hug. She began, but her voice broke. Isabel set aside her knitting, her eyes full of concern. Christine, what happened? Taking a deep breath, she explained everything, from Louis' plight to her manager's decision. When she finished, there was silence, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Louise, wise beyond her years, looked up at her mother. You did the right thing, Mommy. Helping people is never wrong. Isabel nodded in agreement. She's right, Christine. You showed compassion when it was needed most. That's something no job can take away from you. Christine felt a flicker of hope. Even in the face of loss, her family's unwavering support reminded her of what truly mattered. But as the night wore on, a nagging question remained. What would tomorrow bring? Little did she know, the answer would arrive sooner than expected, in a way she could never have imagined. The next morning, Christine woke up to the golden rays of sunlight streaming through her window. Yet the warmth of the morning did little to soothe the ache in her chest. Losing her job felt like a crushing blow, not just to her finances, but to her spirit. Still, she couldn't afford to wallow. Her family was counting on her. At breakfast, Isabel placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of her daughter. You'll find something else, she said gently. You've never been one to give up. Christine forced a smile, though her thoughts were far from hopeful. It's just... Everything was finally starting to feel stable. And now this, Louise piped up, her young voice filled with conviction. Mom, remember what you always tell me? When something bad happens, it's just a chance for something better to come along. Christine chuckled, ruffling her daughter's hair. When did you get so wise? Determined to move forward, she spent the day scouring job listings online. Application after application went out, but the phone remained silent. Each rejection chipped away at her resolve, but she refused to let despair win. By evening, Christine was back in the living room with her family, brainstorming ways to make ends meet. I could take on a cleaning job temporarily, she suggested. Isabel shook her head. You've worked too hard to settle for something less than you deserve. Keep looking. You'll find the right opportunity. Just as Christine was about to respond, the phone rang. She hesitated, glancing at the unfamiliar number on the screen. Should I answer it? Always, Isabel urged. Christine picked up the call, her voice cautious. Hello? Hello? Is this Christine? A calm, friendly voice replied. This is Olivier, Louis's son. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Her heart skipped a beat. Olivier? No, not at all. How can I help you? My father told me about what you did for him, Olivier began. He was deeply moved, and so was I. I wanted to thank you in person and make sure he repays you. Christine felt a wave of relief and gratitude. That's very kind of you. You didn't have to call. I insist, Olivier said warmly. Could I visit tomorrow to properly thank you? After giving him her address, Christine hung up, her mind racing. She wasn't sure what to expect, but something about Olivier's tone gave her hope. The following afternoon, Christine anxiously tidied the living room. She told herself it wasn't a big deal, just a simple visit, but her nerves betrayed her. When a car pulled into the driveway, her heart leapt. Olivier stepped out, a tall man in his early 40s, with kind eyes that mirrored his father's. He carried a small envelope in one hand and a warm smile on his face. Christine, he greeted as she opened the door. That's me, she said, motioning him inside. Once seated, Olivier handed her the envelope. This is the amount my father owes you. He insisted on paying you back the exact amount, down to the cent. Christine smiled, touched by the gesture. Thank you. I really didn't expect anything in return. Well, you deserve more than just repayment, Olivier replied. You showed compassion to someone you barely knew, and that's rare. They talked for a while, Christine recounting the events of that day, and Olivier sharing stories about his father. As the conversation unfolded, Olivier's tone grew serious. There's something I should tell you, he began. My father has Alzheimer's. It's been getting worse recently, and that day at the station he got confused. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He was on his way to see me, but he forgot why he'd left the house. Christine's heart ached for Louis. I had no idea. He seemed lost, but genuine. He was, Olivier said, and what you did for him meant the world to us. Most people wouldn't have been so kind. Before Christine could respond, Olivier reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. I have a proposition for you. A proposition? She echoed, surprised. I own a chain of gas stations, he explained, and I need someone reliable to manage one of them. Someone who can handle responsibility and has the kind of empathy you've shown. If you're interested, the job is yours. Christine's jaw dropped. Are you serious? Completely, Olivier said with a smile. You're exactly the kind of person I want on my team. Overwhelmed, Christine glanced at her mother and daughter, who had been quietly listening from the doorway. Their expressions were a mix of astonishment and joy. You have no idea what this means to me, she said, her voice trembling. Then it's settled, Olivier replied. You start as soon as you're ready. As he left, Christine stood on the porch, watching his car disappear down the street. She felt a surge of hope, stronger than anything she'd experienced in weeks. Her simple act of kindness had not only changed Louis's life, but had also brought a new chapter of opportunity and stability for her own family. In that moment, Christine knew one thing for sure. No good deed ever goes unnoticed. The next morning, Christine woke up to an air of optimism she hadn't felt in weeks. Olivier's offer had ignited a spark of hope, and for the first time in a long while, she could see a path forward. Determined to prove herself, she arrived early at the gas station where Olivier had asked to meet her for training. The station was larger than her previous workplace, with a steady flow of cars filling the pumps. Olivier greeted her with a firm handshake and a warm smile. Welcome to your new workplace, Christine, he said, gesturing toward the bustling station. This might feel overwhelming at first, but I have no doubt you'll handle it. I'll give it my all, Christine replied with conviction. Olivier began her training with a tour of the facility, explaining the responsibilities she would have as the station's manager. Christine absorbed every detail, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. "You're a fast learner," Olivier remarked as they finished reviewing the inventory system. "I've always believed in hard work," Christine said, "and after everything that's happened, I'm even more motivated to succeed." Over the next few days, Christine dove into her new role, quickly gaining the respect of the staff. Her natural empathy and ability to handle difficult situations shone through, earning her admiration from both employees and customers. One particularly busy afternoon, a young father rushed into the station, his face pale with panic. "I'm so sorry, but I left my wallet at home. My wife's in labor, and I just need enough gas to get to the hospital," he pleaded. Christine didn't hesitate. "Go," she said, handing him a few bills from her pocket. "Your family is more important than anything else right now." As the man sped off with a grateful wave, one of the employees approached her. "You're not worried he won't pay you back?" Christine smiled. "I've learned that kindness has a way of coming full circle. Besides, it's worth the risk." Her words resonated with the staff, and from that moment on, Christine became more than just their manager. She became a source of inspiration. Several weeks later, Christine was in the middle of her shift when Olivier walked in unexpectedly. He carried an envelope in one hand and wore an expression of quiet excitement. "Christine," he began, "I have something for you." She set down her clipboard and looked at him curiously. "What's this?" Olivier handed her the envelope. Inside was a formal letter and a shiny set of keys. As she read the contents, her eyes widened in disbelief. "You're transferring ownership of this station to me," she gasped. Olivier nodded. "You've earned it. I've watched how you've transformed this place, not just operationally, but in spirit. The staff respects you, and customers keep coming back because of the way you treat them. This station deserves a leader like you." Christine was speechless. "I don't know what to say. This is beyond anything I could have imagined." "Say yes," Olivier said with a grin. Tears welled in her eyes as she embraced the gravity of the moment. "Yes. 100 times. Yes." The news spread quickly, and by the end of the day, employees and regular customers gathered to congratulate Christine. Isabelle and Louise were there too, beaming with pride. "I told you, Mommy," Louise said with a triumphant smile. "Good things happen when you're kind." Christine knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly. "You were right, sweetheart. You were right all along." As the sun set that evening, casting a golden glow over the station, Christine stood outside, the keys to her future in her hand. What had begun as a single act of kindness had blossomed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of compassion and the unexpected rewards it could bring. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, Christine faced it with renewed strength, her heart full of gratitude and her spirit unshaken. This wasn't just the end of one chapter. It was the beginning of a legacy built on kindness, perseverance, and the belief that even the smallest good deeds could change lives. Christine stood outside the gas station, the golden hues of the setting sun painting the sky behind her. In her hand, she held the keys that symbolized not just ownership, but the culmination of her journey. The road she had traveled, marked by kindness, sacrifice, and perseverance, had brought her here, to this moment of triumph. Her mother, Isabelle, approached with a proud smile. "You've come so far, my dear. I knew your heart would guide you to something extraordinary." Christine nodded, emotion welling up inside her. "It wasn't easy, but every step was worth it. I've learned that even the smallest act of kindness can ripple into something far greater." Louise, her daughter, tugged at her sleeve, her bright eyes full of excitement. "Mom, does this mean you're the boss now?" Christine laughed and knelt to hug her. "Yes, sweetheart. But more importantly, it means I get to build something meaningful. For us, for the people who work here, and for anyone who needs help." Later that evening, after the celebrations had quieted, Christine took a moment to reflect. The station was silent, save for the occasional hum of passing cars. She thought back to the day she met Louis, the simple old man who had unknowingly set this transformation into motion. "I wonder how he's doing," she murmured, a gentle smile on her lips. Olivier's words echoed in her mind. Compassion is rare, but it's what makes the world better. She knew now that every decision she had made, both the ones celebrated and the ones criticized, had been worth it. Standing at the counter, she turned to her team, who had gathered for a meeting. "This isn't just a gas station anymore," she began. "It's a place where we treat people with respect and empathy. If someone's in need, we help them. That's the standard I want us to uphold." Her employees nodded, inspired by her determination. As the months passed, Christine's station became known for its exceptional service and welcoming atmosphere. Customers returned not just for fuel, but for the sense of community she had cultivated. Her story even spread online, with countless people moved by her journey and inspired by her unwavering kindness. To all of you watching, Christine's story reminds us that compassion and determination can turn even the darkest moments into opportunities for greatness. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any more heartwarming and thrilling stories like this one. And remember, sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness that create the biggest changes. See you in the next video.